Thank you for tuning in to Divine Nobodies podcast. It's your host, Derek Osden. I'm joined here with the beautiful Jennifer Lynn. How you doing, Jen?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good, even though the lady already introduced us. Might as well just do it a second time. We're still trying to gather our sanity from what we experienced with Mercury retrograde.
Oh my God, this was a bad one.
Especially
it was
a tough one. And me and Jen kind of went through it together just in our own lives. But one thing I did want to stress, or actually just bring up on the podcast, is that we had two guests over the last two episodes. And something we'd never actually experienced before with the platform that we used is that we just had all these technical glitches happen.
Yeah. Like just totally stopped recording. The files got lost, couldn't be recovered. I mean, just the craziest stuff.
Yeah, the craziest stuff. And it's never happened to us before. We've been doing a lot of podcasts. We're at podcast 50 now, or actually over 50.
Over 50, yeah.
So, and we've had some setbacks during the last Mercury retrogrades, but this one was specifically a little crazy.
It was.
Given, one of the guests was in Australia, and they were going through a lot of weather issues, and the other guest was, talking to us from a magical school bus in Joshua Tree. And that's bound to happen whenever you try and do a podcast from a magical school bus in Joshua Tree.
It does. Dude, what was that teacher's name that drove the school bus? Mrs.
I have
Frazzle?
no idea.
Frizzle?
Frizzle. I don't know. I just remember the show. I remember the show.
Yeah, she had big orange hair, and she was like, "Oh, get on the school bus, kids."
Yeah, nobody ever really questioned her credentials.
Yeah.
Like what is this lady up to really? Where was she taking these kids?
Now I'm going to have to look it up. I'm obsessed
Well, they were going on a magical journey, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad to be back. We're grounding into the space. Everything feels really good. And Mercury retrograde is over, so we can all celebrate together. And thank you guys for tuning in. We wanted to bring this really important topic up to the episode. This is something that me and Jen actually embody in our regular lives. And this is a book that I had actually read a long time ago. And this is one thing that we wanted to talk about today, because I feel like our listeners, as well as me and you, we can gather a lot of insight and wisdom from this book. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce it. We're going to be not necessarily doing a book report, but we've kind of in a way. Yeah. The book is the 5 Love Languages. It was actually a book that was released back in 1992. So it was quite a long time ago.
Wow. It's that old?
Yeah, just to give you some perspective. Well, the book is called The 5 Love Languages, How to Express Heartfelt Commitment to Your Mate by Gary Chapman. Good old Gary. If you go on YouTube and look up his videos, he's just like the grandfather you never had. He has this like really deep sort of grandfatherish type of tone.
Mm-hmm.
He definitely
really
eats strawberry hard candies.
Oh, love that.
He's that guy like behind you at like the CVS with like Nilla wafers and strawberry hard candies. And he's just like, hey, how you doing?
And the Werthers.
Yeah, exactly. Werthers. He's the guy in front of you when you're really, really busy and you have stuff to do that like pulls out some change and some coupons in front of you, and he just takes forever.
Yeah.
He writes a check. It takes forever, and you start striking up a conversation with the cashier, and you're just like, wow, I got to give it to you. You got the years. You've earned your right to take up everybody's time. So yeah. So Gary Chapman. So this is a best-selling book. Actually, it's been said best-selling book, relationship book of all time.
I believe
50 million copies in 38 countries. Right. So basically the premise of this book, and we'll go into it, we're going to get, you kind of do a deep dive into all the dynamics of this book. So there are 5 love languages that are mentioned in this book. And I'm going to go ahead and read them off really quick, and then we'll kind of trace back, and me and Jen are going to discuss these 5 love languages, how they can really impact your life if you ascribe to at least one of them. So these 5 love languages are quality time, physical touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, and receiving gifts. Now, these aren't difficult to understand. These are all pretty practical. I think all of us know what this means because we've probably experienced at least one or a few of these in every relationship that we've been in, right? So those are the 5 love languages. And first, before we go into a little deeper, I wanted to go over just some data that I found online, Jen.
All right.
And it's from the ShaneCode.com. They actually did a few different surveys. One of them was based off of Google Trends search data over a 12-month window, and it shows in what areas of the United States people ascribe to these different love languages. And it's crazy. The gifts, what does it say? Receiving gifts, Texas and Florida, for some reason, really interesting, seem to
Texas
be
and
the
Florida?
highest percentage of people that are
Huh.
gift givers.
Interesting. Maybe it's that Southern charm, that like Southern, I don't know, courtship.
That's possible, and we'll go into each one of these love languages. It doesn't necessarily mean a sort of materialistic sort of thing. It can be something as simple as just like a thoughtful gesture for somebody,
Yeah. Or like
right?
flowers on a first date, or chocolates, or flowers for someone's mom that you're taking out. I mean, they're,
Exactly.
if you're a nice gentleman caller, maybe you have some of these practices that
Yeah, it's sort of
hold
like
these
that old
feathers
sort
in your cap, you know?
those old Southern values, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like
So,
it.
and then you have on the West Coast, which is where me and Jen are. So, California, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico. You got a big percentage of people that are into acts of service.
Oh, okay. That
And
makes
that makes
sense.
sense. You know, like the West Coast, we're really active people. You know, we're like hustlers. You know, there's a lot of tech companies down here. A lot of us are
Mm-hmm.
very career driven people. So, acts of service, the whole, I think, the ability to be in action and manifesting certain things makes sense for acts of service.
Absolutely. I agree.
And and then for more north, I want to say towards like Washington, Idaho, places like that, or more for quality time, which makes sense because there ain't shit to do up there.
Yeah. Cornfields. Yeah. What are you going to do?
Well, I take that back. There's probably like lots of cool things that you can do in Washington, which is actually one of the places I want to visit because it's so beautiful there. But you know what? Quality
You know,
time.
so is Idaho. Idaho is actually really beautiful too.
Aren't they about them potatoes though up there in
They are
Idaho?
about them potatoes. Yeah.
Oh, they got those bangers and mash.
Mm-hmm.
And then where you have more towards the East Coast, like Michigan, New York, they're more into physical touch down there. You know,
Lots of Italians.
yeah, a little bit more frisky over there.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
also it snows there a lot. So
yeah,
then you're stuck in the house with someone for, 7 months out of the year.
yeah,
So
yeah, exactly.
what else
So
is
it
there
makes
to do
sense.
other than to watch TV and fuck? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah, it's crazy when you start breaking it down that way. It totally makes sense just based off of kind of like where our culture is spread out throughout the United States. And it seems that where's acts of service at? Acts of service. Yeah, so those are the West Coast ones. And then words of affirmation really don't take up too much space in the United States. They're kind of like more in the Midwest, like Georgia. Well, not Georgia wouldn't be considered Midwest, but like Louisiana,
Mm-hmm.
places like that. And so that's just like gives you an idea. These are all Google search, basic Google Trends search data over a 12-month window. So it doesn't encompass the whole, but it kind of gives you some perspective. And then there's most popular love languages according to a survey of 2,600 people. Which one do you think out of this 2,600 people had the highest percentage, Jen?
The highest percentage?
Yeah, out of the five.
Oh man, I would say I'm gonna go with my top love language, acts of service.
No, that one only got out of, 100%, 11.8%.
Really interesting. Okay.
11.8%. The highest one that got the highest percentage is quality time. So that was at
Really?
41.6%.
Well,
Right. So
after the last 18 months, everybody got lots of quality time together.
yeah, absolutely.
I
And
wonder what the love language is now.
oh, I'm sure we'll see it change. So there were 41.6 quality time. And then the second one on that list is words of affirmation. So that's at 18.5%.
Mm-hmm.
And then trails down to physical touch at 15.4%, receiving gifts at 12.6%, and then acts of service, 11.8% is acts of service. You're a dying breed, Jen.
Wow. All right.
These are just some stats of just 2,600 people. So it just gives you a good idea of everybody falls all over the spectrum, you know.
And this is in the U.S.?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the U.S. So me and Jen, we took this test. Did you take your test?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to go over our percentages here, Jen.
All right.
And
Let's
maybe
do it.
we'll guess. We'll guess each other's love languages, right? And we'll
Okay.
see kind of where we land on the spectrum with that. So you go first. Which one do you think is my most prominent one?
I think your most prominent one is going to be physical touch.
Physical touch?
Yep. And I would
But
say
do you-
number 2 would be quality time.
Quality time? But why is that though, Jen?
But why? Okay.
But why so?
I mean, you're a Libra, so you're such a loving, kind of lovey, gushy kind of person. So I don't know, whenever I think of somebody like you, I think that that's what they would like.
Well, you got
when
very
you're a cold-hearted
close.
bitch like me, you get 0 on your physical
That's why we
touch.
contrast well, Jen. You're the voice of reason when it comes to my softness. You know what I mean? Because I
Yeah.
can get myself into a lot of trouble with that whole sort of romantic vibe that I got with my scales going on. You know?
Yeah. Oh, you're
Especially-
you're totally a romantic.
Yeah. I'm like
100%.
I'll be talking to Jen on the phone and I'm just like romanticizing a really toxic person and she's like, you need to calm your ass down.
I'm like, this person sucks.
You're like, he's like, I get what you're saying, but you realize this person sucks, right? And I'm like, you know what? And she's got to talk me back down from this sort of like cloud of romanticism that I find myself in. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to romanticize things, but you have to,
No, not at all.
you got to have some boundaries with that.
But you do well with facts. So when I start providing examples of why you shouldn't be thinking that way, you're like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, well, you got a point there. Yeah, no, she did do that. Yep. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that one.
Yeah. You'd be like, this percentage of this person is at about 90%. That 90% is all the people that think this person sucks. So come back to reality, Eric.
I think it's
Right.
cute.
Yeah. So you were close. You were close, but you had kind of transposed. So,
Oh, okay.
and this actually surprised me, Jen. I actually thought
It did?
I thought that physical touch would be my first,
Oh, okay. So
but quality time was my first.
that makes sense.
Yeah. So I got 33% quality time, 30% physical touch, 27% words of affirmation, 10% acts of service, and absolutely 0% with receiving gifts.
Interesting.
Yeah, which I guess makes sense because like physical proximity is really important,
Yeah.
like I'm somebody that likes to communicate. So when I have like my partner or the person that I'm dating in front of me, and these can go for platonic, non-platonic people too. This can be with friends and anybody. This is just how you receive love from other people.
Mm-hmm.
Quality time is really important to me,
Yeah,
especially
I can see
nowadays
that.
where people there's a loss of time that people experience in pretty much everything. So if somebody has enough time to sit in front of me or spend time with me, like that means a lot.
Time is the only non-renewable resource.
Yeah.
So.
And the paradox behind that is that it's one of those things that doesn't even really exist,
That's so true.
So
know.
the second one of those, physical touch, there's something tangible about having somebody there next to you. And words of affirmation, I look at that as like communication, seeking healthy amounts of validation from people that you're doing good, that help you along your path and inspire you to be better. And in acts of service, I can kind of take or leave acts of service because you could also look at quality time and physical touch, words of affirmation as a form of acts of service.
Yeah.
Receiving
that's true.
gifts, I like taking them. I appreciate them, but I don't exactly equate that to love.
What's the best gift you ever received? I
The
think I know
best
what
gift
it
I've
is.
ever received?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are we talking like more 3D type of stuff? Because I can just get all...
No, the most thoughtful, like the most thoughtful gift that like really touched your heart.
I think my family.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. And that's more of like an existential thing. That's more of like a universal thing, right? So
Right.
I guess I'm really appreciative of the family and friends that I have. And those are like the greatest gifts.
That's really sweet. That's not what I was asking, but that's really sweet.
Yeah. I had an idea that wasn't what you were asking, but I might as well play it from that field first and then we can go back down. I think that one of the best gifts that I've ever received. I'd have to, maybe my cat. My cat Binks.
That was a gift? She was a gift?
I guess we got to put into context what we consider a gift. I feel like anything that has come across my path.
No.
That I appreciate.
No, something that someone gave you.
You got to be clear, Jen.
Oh, shit. Okay. So.
Something that somebody gave me?
Yes.
That's a really good question. We'll have to come back to that because I've been given so many amazing things in my life.
Yeah, you
have. And to be honest, I look at them all equally.
Okay.
It's hard for me to think of something that somebody's given me that's like really, really meant a lot.
Ooh, and that could get you in trouble too because lots of people listen to our podcast.
You know what's like a
I'm
really
sure
good
people
gift?
who have given you gifts and they're like, shit,
actually
he
been
didn't say my gift.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, exactly. We'll come back to that one. We'll come back to it.
Okay.
Well, let's talk about yours, Jen, because I went through this. This was actually a series of tests, and I think there was probably over 20 or 30 questions that help determine where you fall on the spectrum. So my primary love language is quality time. So yours, I imagine, just based off of how I know you, is more than likely acts of service.
Yes, it was overwhelmingly my number one.
I think you actually gave it away at the beginning of the podcast too.
I did. Yeah, I did. I've talked about it on other podcasts too. Like this is,
Yeah.
I just love it when Jeremy does the dishes or will take the dogs out or make coffee or makes me lunch, anything like that. I'm like, oh, if I'm really busy and he comes in with this delicious sandwich. What is it about sandwiches that you don't make? If someone else makes a sandwich, it tastes so good. And you make yourself a sandwich and it's just like some regular ass white
That's
bread
like when
again.
somebody
Womp
gives
womp.
that's like when you give yourself a massage in comparison to somebody giving you a massage.
Yeah.
It's like you're massaging the same muscles, but for whatever reason, it just feels better when somebody else is doing it. And that's when I start
100%.
that's when I really think about the energetic component behind things.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just you can feel the love that your partner has for you through something like a massage.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're doing it yourself, yeah, you have that love, but there's just a different type of energy.
I feel love through food too.
So what you're talking
when my
about,
grandma
though?
cooks food, it's just so much better because there's so much love in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll
This is
use
what
the
I
same
think it is.
recipe and it doesn't taste the same. I don't
Grandma's old butter biscuits.
Oh man. Biscuits and
Yeah.
gravy. Shit on a
Oh,
shingle
yeah.
is what they call it in the South.
Oh yeah, and then she passes down that recipe through your sort of family heirloom, and then when you sit down and actually get it, she will never ever write it down.
Mm-hmm.
And you want like measurements. You want to be like, well, how much salt, how much condensed milk do I put in this? And they just said, you know what she says to you? She said, you just got to feel it.
Yeah.
You just got to feel it. It can't be taught.
Yeah.
And in some ways, those grandmas are like little sages. You know why? Because you know what those Eastern gurus say? It
What do
can't
they
be
say?
taught.
It's true.
Can't be taught. So, word up to the grandmothers out there. But in response to your what you were talking about, the sandwiches,
Mm-hmm.
because your acts of service, what I think it is that you know that it requires somebody to build it for you.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's it. And I appreciate him the most when he does something that he doesn't want to do because he knows that I want him to do it. So a perfect example of this would be like going to one of my friends' birthday dinners. Does he want to go to birthday dinner of my friend that he doesn't really know that well, or maybe even my friend that he doesn't like that much? No, he doesn't. But he goes and he even pays. So, it's things like that I really appreciate. I'm like,
Yeah.
that was
And
nice.
then when you think about all the other love languages there are, I mean, you can see how all those other, 4 remaining ones kind of are worked into that acts of service all collaboratively together.
Absolutely.
What were your other ones?
So my acts of service was 40%. No surprise there. My second one was quality time at 30%.
Okay.
So I think that kind of goes hand in hand a little bit though with acts of service. Like
It does.
I don't know. Yeah. And then my third was words of affirmation. And my fourth was receiving gifts at 10%. So, and I can tell you exactly where that came from. So I'm going to share a little story about Valentine's Day.
Why you don't like getting gifts?
I hate getting gifts. It just makes me very uncomfortable. Just like when somebody like comments on the way I look, or they'll say like, "Oh, you're pretty," or this or that. It makes me very uncomfortable. I'm not good at like receiving gifts or compliments. It makes me feel weird. So yeah. But there was a time about two years ago, and Jeremy said, "Hey, let's have a Valentine's Day dinner at our house." And I was like, our house is not ready for a Valentine's Day dinner for 30 people because we were remodeling and everything was crazy. So he announces it at a party that we're at, and everybody's like, "Great idea, we'll be there." And I looked at him like, "Motherfucker, we have so much to do on this house. This is crazy." So the day of the party, I am cooking. I've got the paint can out. I'm painting a wall, doing touch-ups, putting in trim. I mean, the whole nine. And where's Jeremy? He went golfing with this boss. And I said, Jeremy, this was your idea, and here I am cooking and doing all the shit. Do not come home from the golf course drunk, and your ass better be on time to help me with, the last minute things. Okay, I promise. I'll be on time and I won't come home drunk. Okay. Guess what happened?
He came home just really sober.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And late. So people are showing up and he bebops in the door, fucking willy-nilly, woo, got his buzz on, having a good time. And I am pissed. So, we do the whole dinner, everybody has a nice time, whatever. And we're cleaning up and he knew he was in trouble. So I'm thinking, he better have got me a fucking gift. I better have a fucking gift for all this bullshit. He did not even
Tiffany's bracelet.
He did not even get me a card. I didn't get shit. I'm like,
they give you nothing?
No, nothing. So we had a chat about that. I'm like, you can't plan a party that I don't want to have. Leave me here to handle all the shit. Come home drunk and not get a gift. You can't do all that. And he was like, well, I did get you a card. It's in the car. I forgot to fill it out. Do you want me to go fill it out? I'm like, no, I don't want you to go fill it out.
Let me tell you how to give me my gift.
I'm like, no, never mind. Forget it.
Oh my God. He needs Jesus.
He is bless his heart, because he's a sweet person. He is the worst gift giver ever. Like he is clueless. So anyway, when I was answering the questions,
you have to tell him to listen to our podcast, Jen.
I know. So when I was answering these questions, that story came to mind because there was one of the questions was kind of like related to a holiday and getting a gift. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and select that one because that made me think of that story. But I actually got a 0% on physical touch.
Really?
Yeah.
But
which
that doesn't
surprise
me. I know, I know you because you're an Aquarius and acts of service is definitely your thing. But that's interesting, right? Because there's a lot of people that would never ever think of just axing all the rest of those and just, acts of service being predominantly, I guess, the main ruling sort of one of the five. Mm-hmm. So everybody's so different.
Yeah.
In his defense, though, just on a side note, he was with his boss and, that's usually some serious shit.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give him that. And that's why he wasn't in that big of trouble. But yeah, it was more that I didn't want to have the party in the first place. And then I got coerced into it and then had to do all the work. But the good news is, and this was the upside, as the next day, my honey-do list was this long to finish things that we didn't get to. And he did them all by himself because he knew Mama was mad.
Oh, he redeemed himself.
He redeemed himself, yeah.
Oh, nice. A few sandwiches later and he's back on top.
That's right. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
I'm simple.
So like me and Jen, we're very different when it comes to how we receive love. And our love languages can be taken into consideration with that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to break it down for everybody. If you guys actually want to take the test, all you have to do is just go on 5lovelanguages.com. And the author put together a nice little quiz that you guys can take. You can figure out what yours is. His name is Gary Chapman again. So we're going to go over and read them off, and then we'll go into just a little bit more in depth as to the psychology behind this, how you guys can apply it to your own life, what it means to you in a relationship, and what it doesn't mean in a relationship. Because these are this is the meat and potatoes of the whole thing. So we're going to go ahead and just read off these really quick. The first one, quality time. According to Dr. Chapman, who's the fellow that wrote the book, he's a doctor, so he's legit. It says, quality time is giving someone your undivided attention. I don't mean sitting on a couch watching television. I mean sitting on the couch with TV off, looking at each other and talking. Basically, building strong relationships comes from meaningful connections. So an intentional sort of form of quality time is just being with each other, like physical proximity. And I know exactly what this is like because I've dated somebody that's like that, where it's like, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Jen, where it's like you're in the same room with somebody and you're not even doing the same things, but there's this sort of collective understanding. Well, I mean, this is in contrast to what we're talking about. I translated it as quality time, where we had something called Creation Station, where I was working on, let's just say, some video editing stuff, and she was right next to me reading a book. Mm-hmm. And so there was this sort of warmth and understanding and comfort of being in each other's space. And that was actually very inspiring. because that person wasn't being codependent. They weren't saying like, hey, pay attention to me. I need more of this. There was just sort of just general understanding of what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And in that same situation, I remember actually sitting down on a couch with this person, and I remember we got a book out, and I held it in my hand. We were laying down on the sofa, and we take turns reading paragraphs out of this book.
How cute is that? Oh, you're
Right?
such a romantic. I love how cute that is.
Isn't that some Libra shit?
That's some Libra shit right there.
Yeah. Yeah. So
And
we
then
did that.
and then you drew her a bath and brought her some wine while she was taking a hot bath.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
just to preface, this was actually the book that we were reading was Think Like a Muck by Jay Shetty.
That's a long book. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, we didn't go through the whole book. Right.
No. Yeah, of course not.
So there has to be a collective understanding of what your love language is. But in that situation, we both just vibed in that way.
Oh,
And I think in my mind, yeah, I could have, drawn her a bath, and, maybe that's in the cards for some situation in the future. But quality time is exactly that, where you both have a mutual understanding of what it means to share an intentional space with somebody.
when I was in nursing school, I had a really good guy friend, and I'm in school and I was studying all the time, and he wanted to hang out, and I was like, I have to study, and he was like, well, he was a screenplay writer as a hobby, so he was like, okay, well, let's just meet at a coffee shop and we'll just like hang out, and you can study and I'll write my screenplay. And that's how we would hang out together. We didn't even talk. I mean, I'm studying, he's doing his thing, but just to be out of the house and be around another person that you care about is enough. I mean, there's
Exactly.
a weird type of, I don't know, energy where you're still connecting even if you're not talking.
Right. Yeah. And this goes for, again, not platonic, non-platonic. I mean, family loves having you around.
Yeah.
That warmth that you feel when you're with your family, with your mom. I mean, quality time is like a huge, huge indicator of love in those type of scenarios.
For sure.
But if your love language is predominantly quality time, it's important that you find a partner that is willing to share space with you. So maybe somebody that lives long distance probably wouldn't be a good fit for you unless you guys make the conscious effort to meet up together in the same city and spend, substantial periods of time, maybe once or twice a month, or, however long.
That is a whole podcast. I mean, long distance relationships, there are a lot of dynamics in that.
Yeah.
We could do a whole podcast on that. Maybe we will.
Yeah. And
let us know.
Yeah. So quality time. So that's quality time. And then acts of service, according to Dr. Chapman, which is the next one, it is the nonverbal form of love that can be time consuming and exhausting. But if it's what your partner needs, then it's worth the effort. It is described as doing something for your spouse or partner that they would like, such as cooking for them, cooking their favorite food, cleaning their car, taking care of your partner's loved one for having a stroke, for example. So basically this love language, acts of service, is about demonstrations of love, right? So acts of service, Jen, you can probably speak to this, and we've kind of been talking about it, which is just doing something nice for somebody. So if you have a girlfriend and, she's already at 4,000 miles on her car, go on YouTube and change her oil for her.
Oh, that'd be really nice.
Yeah.
That's a nice, thoughtful thing.
Something like that. Or make a sandwich.
Yeah. Hey, it's even like little dumb stuff. If we are going to the grocery store, he puts all the groceries in the car so I can just get in and sit down. Or if it's cold, he'll turn the car on early and make it warm, so whenever I go out to the car, it's not cold. I mean, it's like little things that he does that are really thoughtful. Yeah.
Yeah. So who do you think, acts of service, somebody that is predominantly acts of service, what would be some conflict that they'll run into? What would be the wrong person to be with somebody with acts of service?
Someone who is not thoughtful in that way. So I pretty much every other guy I dated. I have a long list. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe somebody that is their love language is completely different. I think it's kind of hard. It's hard to be with someone that you don't have some of these things in common. Like I'm a physical touch 0, so I couldn't be with somebody who was a 50 or 60% physical touch. I mean, I would feel crowded. So, I think you have to have some of these in common.
Right. Absolutely. We'll get down to the psychology of it after we go through all of this list, because you're absolutely right. If we relate this to psychology, actually, I think human beings just like to feel that warm, sort of fuzzy feeling when we get, the feeling that we get from selfless acts.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, neurobiologists also found out that selfless acts activate the reward centers of the brain. So you got a bunch of neurochemicals, oxytocin, norepinephrine, dopamine, all these things that just sort of start to fire whenever somebody does something nice for you. So if you're in acts of service.
Gets me going too is vacuuming. There's something about instant gratification of vacuuming and seeing like the clean lines in the floor. I love that.
Really?
I love to vacuum. That's one of my favorite chores to do.
I mean, I resonate with acts of service. I'll always appreciate somebody doing something nice for me, but it's physical touch and quality time are really, really important. But just like you say, we can wrap all of these into one. I mean, we all have percentages, higher and lower percentages of all of these things.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So acts of service, that's acts of service. We're going to go into gift giving, which is receiving gifts. According to Dr. Chapman, this love language is not about the items that you give. It's about showing them the effort, improving that you are thinking of them and that you listen and care for them.
Mm-hmm.
This actual love language is often misunderstood. For other people, receiving gifts can be sort of like greedy, because for them, the recipient is more focused on the gift than the thought behind it.
Right. Yeah.
So we have to be really, really clear, because we're not talking about, the most expensive thing equates to the type of love that you provide. So it's not one of those things where the measurement of love is based off of how expensive the item is. So say they get you a Michael Kors purse or whatever. It doesn't have to be anything like that. It could be just as simple as just like a gesture,
I actually got a gift recently that I thought was hilarious. So I just, over COVID, I took up golf, right? Because there wasn't much to do and you could do that outside. And my husband's a really good golfer and his brother is a pro golfer. So they have golfed their whole life. And since we took up golfing, Jeremy ordered me a marker, and it says, "Talk birdie to me."
Really?
Isn't that cute? Talk birdie to me. Do you
That's
know
so
what a birdie
punny,
is
Jen.
in golf?
That's so punny. I kind of know. I know that it's affiliated with golf, but I couldn't tell you what it meant.
Okay. So it's a good thing.
Yeah. A birdie?
Yeah. So I thought it was really cute.
Yeah.
That it was a thoughtful gift, like, maybe was $10, but I thought it was really
like, I'm a thoughtful gift type of person. You know what I mean? Like, because a lot of people in my life, they don't necessarily care about how expensive something is. But I think a good example of a thoughtful gift is you understanding the person, like you knowing what they like, knowing what their hobbies are, and buying them something really practical that they could possibly even use for that.
Mm-hmm.
The other day I met this this sort of mentally challenged, sort of like mentally disabled guy that I ended up actually playing chess with.
Okay.
And it came up in a conversation that he was really into chess, and he happened to have a chessboard with him. And he was just like the sweetest guy. And he asked me if I knew how to play chess. And I was like, absolutely. Yeah. Actually, chess was one of my favorite games growing up, because it was a game that I used to play with my father.
Oh, okay.
And
I didn't know that.
I wanted to sit down. He wanted me to sit down with him and play chess. Right. So we played. He completely kicked my ass.
Mm-hmm.
Right. He was so intelligent, really, really, really amazing person. And it inspired me. He inspired me, he inspired me. So what I did is the day after I met him, I went on and bought him one of those chess timers that they used to use in like competitive chess.
Yeah.
Because he was talking about like how he really, really loved chess, and he always wanted to use one of those timers.
Oh, cute.
So I went and I got him a chess timer, so the next time I see him, I can give it to him.
Oh.
And that chess timer was only like $10-15.
Yeah.
But it's like reading intuitively into what somebody's interests are. Like if it was your mother and you know that she likes to cook, just, get her like a nice cutting board or a spatula, like something that shows that you pay attention to them as a person.
I love that.
Not necessarily that you're trying to win them over with something expensive.
I dated a guy years and years ago, and he was out of town for work and brought me back a gift. And he was like, "You have to guess what it is." And I'm like, how the hell am I going to guess what it is? I mean, you were in Auschwitz. I don't know what would be there. And he was like, "It's your 2 favorite things." And I was like, I thought about it. I was like, "What is my favorite thing?" I said, "Coffee." And he was like, "Yes." I was like, "All right, first one." And he was like, "And one other thing." I was thinking so hard, and I was like, "Man, I don't know." And it was chocolate. And those are my two favorite things. I love coffee and chocolate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but so thoughtful.
Chocolate's got, it stimulates the same receptors of, as like, more illicit substances. You know what I mean? It's so an aphrodisiac.
I'm about
So
it.
I feel like the gift giving is if you're going to give a gift to somebody, it's like maybe a gift that that they can use in their regular everyday life. Something very, very considerate, but also pay really close attention, because some girl can say that she's really into gifts and she could expect you to just drop a couple G's on some Louis Vuitton type shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if that's your vibe, that's fine. But we're not talking about materialistic stuff here.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So we're going to go to the next one, which is physical touch. And physical touch, let's see here. Physical touch is the physical expression of love. It is a nonverbal love language that focuses more on intimacy. It could be holding hands, laying your hand on your partner's shoulder, simply, just like a hug. So it's definitely physical in nature. And we tend to kind of think of it more in like a sensual need sort of way. Whenever somebody says physical touch, that your sort of ego pops in and is like, oh, someone likes to fuck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I just go straight to sex whenever you say physical touch. I'm like,
yeah,
skip it all. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a spectrum, because I've actually been with people where it's like, you're making love like 5 times a day, and that's a different type of energy that's involved with that. But physical touch, we're not talking about specifically just sensual needs, but also, it's more than sex and sensual needs. Having physical touch as your love language can be a little tricky. Your partner may not understand what you want, and it can create some frustration. In psychology, touch is the first sense that we acquire when we're infants, right? So that's one of those things that's sort of like really hard grained into your physiology and just how you give and receive love. It's our first form of communication with the world, and it's critical in our social and behavioral development. There's actually one research that I read that says by touching, we have the ability to send and receive emotional signals from other people.
Okay.
Yeah.
I believe that. I believe that with, I think about a hug, right? Whenever you hug someone and you're like heart to heart with someone, you totally receive who they are.
Yeah. It's just like another form of communication, Yeah. You're communicating like positive emotions like joy, love, gratitude, sympathy. And, holding space, I feel like is what comes up for me is that, like, when someone's having a particularly hard time, say you have a friend there, and you wouldn't think so, but just somebody just like reaching out their hand and just putting it on your back, or just it's almost the same as saying like, I'm here, like I understand, like you exist.
Yeah.
It's almost like a form of expressing to somebody that you exist and I acknowledge in this huge world of 7-8 billion people. I could have had anybody come across my path, but in this moment, you exist. And that's really powerful.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So touch is very, very, very crucial, and happens to be one of my favorite love languages. Wanted to ask you though, Jen. So, and then there's, let's just see, words of affirmation. Did we talk about words of affirmation?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So words of affirmation, according to Dr. Chapman, I think this is the 5th one, is the expression of love through verbal communication. And this verbal communication is supportive, encouraging, appreciative, and affirmative.
Yeah.
It can also be shown in written messages such as love notes, love letters, and such. And this is such a vast subject because, I mean, do you think that people that ascribe to the whole words of affirmation like dirty talk in the bedroom?
Ooh, probably. If communication is their thing, yeah.
Yeah. They're like, oh, you're just such a great person, such a great lover. I don't think that's dirty talk, but I'm making it PG.
Yeah, no. But I think they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah. According to Dr. Catherine Lively, affirmations are used to reprogram the subconscious mind to help us create the reality that we want.
That's right. Do you do affirmations after a meditation, or even sometimes during a meditation?
Do I?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Affirmations for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, affirmations are really important because it's like, we go through great lengths to get sort of validation from other people. We do this thing where we externalize our sort of self-worth with other people, and we seek sort of another form of affirmation through the mouths of other people.
Right.
And that can feel good. But when you're somebody that's maybe codependent, you're seeking, and that's the only way that you get validation, it can sometimes be toxic because it's not something that you're cultivating yourself. So words of affirmations that you're talking about, ones that you say to yourself before and after meditation, are really powerful because you're validating yourself. Like you're really checking in with the deepest aspects of who you are. And some of those affirmations can come as questions or statements. And to have those affirmations just be so intimately close to you where there's nobody else involved, to get your own validation through affirmations are really important.
Yeah, I agree.
Because we want to feel valued and appreciated. And we're social creatures. And when I think of words of affirmation, I think of, something that I just said, which is like we live in a really, really vast community of people. And the only way that we interface with each other predominantly at the beginning is through communication. So the communication usually comes first before any sort of physical interaction, So if we're communicating, loving, and this stands very true for me as a sound healer, because in my classes, I always talk about like everybody that comes in and everybody just in general are sound healers because God and source are giving us the ability to speak. So we have an ultimate responsibility to do good with it, which is saying loving things to other people. And so
I've heard you say that before, and I love that.
Yeah.
That's a really
so I'm like, you guys are all
statement.
sound healers.
Yeah.
You guys are all light workers. And anything that you say out of love is an affirmation, right? So anything that you say out of love is an affirmation, and that validates a lot of things. And it's really, really healthy. So I really, really resonate with words of affirmation.
Like that.
Yeah. So those are the 5 love languages. And one thing that I do want to talk about is all of you guys, whoever that's listening, take the test. But any of the 5 ones that we've just mentioned, they resonate with you. That's definitely a good thing. But the one thing that this book isn't meant to do is it's not meant to quantify certain relationships into one of these 5 buckets.
Right.
One, it's not a one size fits all. It's not going to solve all of your issues in your relationship. It's just not going to do that. What it's meant to do is to just give you a good reference point as to where to start understanding your partner in your relationship.
Yeah.
Right. And I went on YouTube and I watched a bunch of videos and I've read like different articles about the 5 love languages, and it can sometimes be polarizing because what some people do is they think that somehow they need to just pick one.
Yeah.
And we got to pay really, really close attention to that, because anytime we start picking a side, just even in life, what ends up happening? We have one side that we ascribe to, and then the other side is one that we don't. And what happens when we start picking sides? We start fighting with each other. So, what I mean by fighting is that if you say that you're somebody that's into physical touch, and you start saying like, oh, I don't vibe with people that are acts of service, you're just going to polarize yourself. And it's really kind of an unrealistic way to look at it, because if you're in a relationship, for example, Jen, and you really love somebody, all 5 of these love languages you'll find are integrated into the whole foundation of your relationship, just from the just in general.
For sure. I mean, this is just a tool to help you better understand your partner. I mean, maybe they do things that irritate the shit out of you. And then you're like, oh, okay, I get it. That because their love language is this and mine is this. That's why they're irritating me.
Yeah. So these things aren't necessarily meant to just match you. Say you find somebody that, you're a physical touch type of person, and you find somebody that's physical touch. It's not an automatic pass. Right. It doesn't automatically mean that you guys are just going to
be super compatible.
Be super compatible. Exactly. Because at the same time, sometimes we need some contrast.
Oh, you need so much more. I mean, there's this is a great tool, but there's so much more to make a relationship work.
Yeah.
Trust, communication, having this similar values.
Yeah. Like, for example, say you are married to, say your love language is physical touch, and you're married to somebody that's a words of affirmation, right? It doesn't mean that you won't receive affection from that person. Obviously, if you're married to somebody, for example, you plan on having kids, what do? She's not just going to sit there angry that you're touching her. You have to collaborate in order to have a child, right? So everybody
collaborate. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. Like she's not just going to be completely deterred by the fact that you want some of this physical attention in order to create a child. Like most people like physical attention. We're just talking about a spectrum. Some people like acts of service more than they like physical touch. So it's not necessarily there to match. It's just about learning to understand your partner a little bit more and understanding that contrast is good. There was this YouTube channel called Apex Mindset. I don't know why I came across this one. And the guy that owns the channel, his name is Richard Cooper. He said that this book was a complete waste of time.
Oh.
And he was just like, you know, instead of reading this book and go over these 5 love languages, you should be working on your relationship. And he was seeing it as a sort of like ultimate fix, you know?
Yeah,
and the way that he was talking about it was like, oh, how is this thing going to solve all your issues? And I'm like, it's not.
It's not. Yeah. This is just a step in the right direction.
Yeah. It's just because you got to think about it. Maybe the people listening to this podcast more or less have a grip on how to intuitively read your partner. Because if you're already into this sort of new age community, you're probably up on all the different types of dynamics of love. But we also have to respect the fact that there are other people out there that this stuff doesn't come very easy to them. You know,
it doesn't come natural. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't come very natural to them. You know, like when I sit with somebody that I'm dating or somebody that I'm with, my significant other, I pay very, very close attention to their behaviors, how they communicate, how they give and receive love. Mm-hmm. And I think as a part of the spiritual community, it's warranted. It's really, really important because love is at the basis of all of that and being completely aware. And awareness is the platform from which you could actually see all 5 love languages working collaboratively together. Now, when you're not working from awareness, that's when you start zeroing in on specific things, saying like, this is, you know, physical touch. And then this is, you start sort of being a little bit more divisive.
Right.
So I think that many of these can be intuitive. You know, if we practice awareness, you can pick up all these different love languages in your partner. You know, and then some people also criticize the love languages, saying that there's a selfish quality to them.
What?
You know,
oh.
Yeah, because when you look at it from one primary language, it kind of can come across that way. Basically, like some people will use it as a way to get what they want. It's like, oh, if I understand your love languages and I get a vibe that you're into gift giving, well, I can just give you gifts, and somehow it's just gonna blindly allow you to cultivate this love for me.
You know? My dad's a gift giver big time. And that's how he shows his love.
Yeah.
He doesn't expect gifts, but that's how he shows love. It's odd.
And that's okay. But I'm talking about people that like use it to pull fast ones on other people, where it's like, okay, I'll be a terrible person, but I'll sleep with you because that's your love language in order to help you feel better. That's like a toxic way of using these things.
Oh yeah. I mean, you know. Like I'm going to cheat on you, but here I bought you this nice bag.
Yeah. So you definitely don't want to get into that whole game of like give and take. Like, oh, I'll do this for you if you do this for me. Like I'll communicate your physical touch if you communicate my acts of service.
Right.
That's the wrong way to look at it. You know, because really what these things represent are the fundamentals of any healthy relationship.
Yeah.
You know, even if you don't believe in love languages, you can still gather these qualities that exist in every relationship if you're paying attention. I would say that a healthy relationship has all 5 of these spread across the board.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are just meant to give you perspective and to give us a good starting point. You know, if you truly love someone, first of all, you'll do all these 5 love languages in general.
So what do you think is the most important thing in a relationship? If you could pick one thing outside of the love languages, what would be the number one thing?
Communication.
Oh yeah, mine too.
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah, it's about like communication is the basis behind any human interaction. Communication is the only reason why you have your partner, right? Because you're in the wild. Let's just call it the wild, whether or not you're in the city or the country. Like you might as well be called that. Like you guys are two completely different paths.
The single life is crazy. It's a jungle.
And somehow through the grace of God, you guys come across your path. You know, do you know that like if the earth was off its axis, but even just like an inch or a centimeter, like none of this would exist. Everything is so approximate, you know, everything is so approximate. And and I think Deepak Chopra had this quote when he says that like, we should all be in a perpetual state of amazement that we even exist at all.
Amen.
You know? And so whenever you meet somebody, you know, it seems so synchronistic. If you're really looking at like the sort of esoteric sacred aspect of it, like you could have taken one step forward that day or one step back, or you could have answered a call or you wouldn't have answered a call and you would have completely missed this person. But somehow everything that day leading up to that point, I live, 36 years of my life, and then I meet this person. It all just sort of makes sense and comes together. Love is such a secret thing, how we meet each other. And then when you finally meet that person face to face, you communicate.
Yeah.
And the way that you communicate, at least in the beginning, is like a large, really, really important piece as to whether or not that person decides to collaborate with you in a relationship. So I feel like communication is so important.
Right. Yeah. 100%.
And communication is important because as long as we're communicating, we're getting that sort of feedback and affirmation and validation from other people that you even exist.
Mm-hmm.
How do we even get a sense of who we are as people without communication? Because a large part of how we gather our ego and gather our sense of self comes from the feedback of others.
Absolutely. I think along with working on how you communicate words of affirmation and words of love and things like that, also work on how you communicate fear and how you communicate anger. So kind of working on if there were 4 points to communication, that would be it. I mean, and I think it's so much harder. It's so much harder to talk about things that make you uncomfortable than the things that are, especially in the beginning of a relationship, that are all, rainbows and butterflies.
That's an important thing that you brought up. It's absolutely true. You notice that when things are going really well with your partner, you're not really thinking too much about it because you're just too busy being present.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier to give into those moments because you're not being tethered by your ideas or the static of your mind. A lot of the time when you talk to people that like are having a good time, or if you remember really happy moments, like you were so integrated with that. That's the reason why they go by so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were just lost in eternity with this person, and you just feel completely connected. You don't even have time to think about all the other stuff. But I'm saying those good times and happy moments are really, really important. But the one thing that will define a relationship are those difficult moments that you experience. Because how do you move through difficult moments? You communicate.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think back of all the relationships that I had, the most meaningful aspects of those relationships were how you move and navigate through difficult situations together.
Absolutely.
How you can compromise, how you can create healthy boundaries, and how you could collaborate, because it's really unrealistic to feel or to think that you're going to get through a relationship unscathed. I mean, life is really, really complex. And at the very core, we're very, very different people from anybody that we meet. So we're going to run into situations where they piss us off.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to run into situations where they grind our gears and wrap us around the axle.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to practice communication. And I think you said it, like communication is and those people that think like, well, when I was basically saying that, like, these aren't going to be end all be alls for your relationship, the 5 love languages, because the one thing that you need in order to activate all of these is communication.
Yeah. That is the glue that holds all this together.
It is the glue that holds all of this together. So what I would suggest, everybody that's listening, if you have a fantastic relationship, that's great. But this is just to give you guys some perspective, just some cliff notes that you can use. If you have a partner that, you want to express physical interaction with, but somehow she's just not as into it as you are, you can come to a determination that she may not even be for you. Or if you're willing to understand her, you're willing to put in the work to understand how she receives love, then these five love languages could help you out a lot.
It's true.
You
could have a me on your hands with a 0 in the physical touch category.
Yeah. Jen's not a rare breed.
Don't touch me.
Very unique. I think you were telling me that, like, you if you had it your way, you'd live in 2 different houses on the same property, on the same
100%,
compound.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. And it's more about, I just like a clean house, and I live with Pigpen.
Okay. So if you had a clean house, then that sort of 2-house thing wouldn't really be a thing.
No, I also like my alone time. So the clean house is part of it, but I like to be by myself too.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's your love language, and you found somebody that can communicate that with you, Jen.
I'm a weirdo. It's amazing that I found anyone.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So my, of course, down The difficulty for me is just romanticizing things. I'm a Libra, physical touch, words of affirmation. I'm spread across the board. You know, all my love languages are activated, and maybe that's the reason why, you know, I don't know. I feel like I'm always going to be a romantic.
You must have been a Cupid in a past life.
A Cupid?
Yeah.
Oh,
You know, those little naked babies shooting arrows?
Those are called cherubs.
Cherubs, yeah.
Yeah.
But
right?
Cupid
Just
is the
listening
one
to
that
Smashing Pumpkins
specifically...
Cherub Rock on the radio?
Yeah. Cupid's the one that specifically shoots you in the heart with the love
Shoots you
arrow.
in the heart? Oh, he goes right for the heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
That's me. Yeah. I'm one of those mythological sort of Greek figures, the cherub. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in, Divine Nobodies podcast. Again, you can go on the website, 5 Love Languages. You can actually just pick up the book. It's the 5 Love Languages, How to Express Heartfelt Commitment to Your Mate by Gary Chapman, the grandfather you never had. It was written in 1992. You definitely like it. It's a quick read. If you want some tools for your toolbox, definitely pick it up. Anyways, like and subscribe if you're on YouTube watching this. If you're watching this on Apple Podcast or Spotify, if you click into the details section of the episode, it'll actually take you directly to the video of this episode. And give it a view if you're somebody that's more of a quality time type of person to be able to see me and Jen.
Spend some quality time with us. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll feel like you're in the same room with us. So yeah, give it a download. Like and subscribe. Give us also a rating. If you have any questions, you can email us at divinenobodiespodcast@gmail.com, or you can find us on social media, IG. We're there doing all the things. I think that's it, right?
That's it.
All right. Namaste, friends.
Namaste.